My name's Adele Onyango, and welcome to another episode of Legally Clueless. No, seriously, I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. Hey you, welcome to episode 334 of Legally Clueless. This is what's coming up.
Being a hot boy, there's a price you pay. As I've told you don't have a uniform, you don't have a badge. So if you don't have those two things, you're a high target for the police. So I remember the first time I got arrested at Nyayo Stadium, I was taken to Nyayo's cell. Then I was taken to Langata police cell. Then we went to Kibera Law Court. I went before a judge. At the Kibera Law Court, we went before a magistrate. You are here for 2 counts, uniform and a badge. And when the judge is done sentencing you, all you have to do is defend yourself now. And I remember, bro, how I defended myself. I think the judge had never had any conductor in her entire life who had a very polished English than me. Because I told the judge, I'm landed, I have a degree, and all I'm here to do is I'm trying to survive. We were like 5. The first 4, for each count, they were fined 10,000. Uniform, 10,000. Badge, 10,000. Total, 20,000. And when it got to me, 5,000 each. But I'm genuinely working hard for myself. And you're torturing me like I'm a big time thief. I've had, you'd find a cop who'd just hit you for no reason. Slap you for no reason. Just because, to them being a conductor is nothing. Cops usually tell us they can make you disappear. And let me tell you, being in the street, you believe that shit.
That is Tito Karis, a very, very insightful, timely, enlightening, interesting story is coming up. And it's pretty long, so I don't want to talk for too long. But if you are an OG member of this family, thank you so much for rocking with the pod. If you're new here, audio episodes like this go out every single Monday. On Wednesdays, we have the midweek teas. On Thursdays, we have our brand new show called For Mannerless Women that has a new episode out on YouTube and a new episode out on our audio podcast platforms. So basically, it's like 2 different episodes you get on Thursday. Depending on if you love to watch video, then subscribe to our YouTube. If you like to just keep listening to audio, no probs, then subscribe to whatever podcast streaming platform you are listening to this on. Okay, I hope you're doing great. I will talk more to you on Wednesday during the midweek teas, but I want us to jump right into 100 African stories. This time we are off to Rongai, which is a place here in Kenya, and Tito, who reps that area code, talks about his story that just has such an incredibly insightful and refreshingly honest take to ambition, and that dream of yours that you want to go for. Sometimes it may take longer than you expect, and sometimes that journey may have shame, may have twists and turns that you never expected, but you've got to keep the hope alive. 100 African stories on Legally Clueless. Stories from Africa.
My name is Titus Karaoke Mugo. Those are my identity names. But on stage, people know me as Tito Karis. So karaoke, man, I'm a firstborn in a family of 5 kids. Let me tell you, if you see me in person, you won't believe I'm a firstborn. Trust you me. But I'm a firstborn in a family of 4 kids. I personally was born in Lamu, a place called Mpeketoni. And I'm a Kikuyu, Bantu tribe. Being a firstborn, my mom and my dad, my mom had me as soon as she came out of high school. So literally, my mom eloped from their home after Form 4, met with my dad. My dad is a soldier, a KDF soldier for that matter. So I'm sure you can imagine the type of upbringing I had. Very tough, routine-based. Like with my dad, there are no shortcuts. My dad had this thing growing up. He would tell us, don't sleep too much. You'd rather wake up 6, even if you have nothing else to do. Wake up at 6 in the morning, get outside, catch a breath, do something, pick the litter. Even if you have to go back and sleep at 8, go sleep. But you shouldn't sleep. Ati ulilala jana, I think, saa 2, umeamka leo saa 4. Don't do that. That is a discipline force that my dad told me. Anyway, back to my upbringing. I grew up in Mpeketoni. I'm one of those people who would say I'm a metropolitan kid. I've grown up in 3 cities. I was born in Lamu. I was there for about 2 or 3 years. Then my dad was away so many times. And then my mom and my shosho, who is the in-law, couldn't get along because my dad wasn't there. So for some reason or another, we had to move from Peketoni and we went to Mombasa now. But yeah, at around 3 or 4 years before I started school, we went to Mombasa. Started school at a place called, it was a Methodist school, it was a church school. So that's where I remember understanding things and comprehending things. And I'm one of those kids who my comprehension level started at a very young age. I'll revise that point later on in the story. Like looking back, there are so many things that I understood as a kid that I shouldn't have been able to understand. Like family issues. Like I could understand we were struggling. I knew we were not a normal family. Like I could tell, like, nyesi tuko na shida huku kwetu. And we go to the neighbor, they have a TV, they have a what and what. So looking back, my comprehension level started at a very, very young age. So I grew up in Mombasa, did my kindergarten. Mombasa tunazita KG1, KG2, KG3. In Nairobi, I think they call it PP1, PP2, PP3. But in Mombasa, it's KG1, KG2, KG3. Then went to primary up until class 8. So my primary school was in Mombasa, purely. But growing up, I always feel like I never liked Mombasa. Like I've never liked the energy. Because we used to live in a community where you're looking at the neighbor, most of them were Swahili, Arabs for that matter. Arabs, Somali, Hindis. And you look at someone who's older than you, literally Mamaliza from 4 or university, but they're still staying at their mom's place. They get married. When do they take the wife? To the mom's place. Do they have a job? No. All they do is feed off from their mom, from their family. They do. And I remember sitting back and I was like, man, this is not a life for me. I don't want to live this kind of life. So at a very young age, growing up, I was kind of gifted, academically. I'm a smart kid. I'm a smart kid because I say so because I remember like in class 6 up until class 8, I was number 1, 2, 3. How I knew I was a smart kid is in Mombasa, we used to live in a place called Kongowea. Like uko ni ghetto ya huko, Jerusalem, Kongowea, somewhere around the place. So later on, my parents are working hard, wakapata do. They moved to a place called Bamburi, which is kind of bougie. Like kuja huku Nairobi ni kama Kileleshwa, ni kama, ni kama utoke east when the west. So when we moved to Bamburi, which is quite a distance from Kongowea, where I was schooling, my mom and dad had to decide, you know what, you need to change school. The school refused for me to change. They refused because they were like, he's the best student we have. And I was going to do my class 8. So they're like, there's no way we're losing our top student because of logistics. They went ahead and were like, so classes end at 6. We will allow him to end classes at 4. We are supposed to be in school by 6. We will allow karaoke to come at 8. Just so that I don't leave that school. That's when I realized, man, kijana ni chopi bana. Mi nimesoma. But all to say, God gave me that gift. And you know why I say it's a gift? Because we grew up in a very challenging home. Like I remember the other time where, because my dad is a soldier, my mom, for the longest time as I've known her, up until now, maybe in the last 5 years, my mom has become a career. But growing up, my mom was a typical housewife. For those who don't know what a typical housewife is, like the job of a housewife is to give birth, take care of the kids. You have no ambitions. You're not allowed to do anything whatsoever. So we solely depended on my dad. So if my dad said he doesn't have money, that's it. If he doesn't have money for meat, you guys won't have meat. In other families where mom and dad are working, if dad says doesn't have money, mom can chip in. But where I grew up and how I grew up was like, if dad didn't have money, and in most cases, he didn't have money. He didn't have money. And despite all that, I'd look back and I'd say, my dad tried the best he could do, because even now we're at a time where people are protesting because of the high cost of living. But, life has been tough way, way, way back. My dad working for the government, the pay slip was very little. Like you could see maybe he was being paid around 30K. By the time the money gets to our home, it's around 15K. The loans, the NHIF, the CG, what. It was a struggle for us as a family, to say the least. And why I say I was gifted, because I remember, because I'm a firstborn in a family of 5, I took care of all my siblings. I didn't have time for me. I remember when I was in class 8, our last born was born. Our last born, she's called Rebecca. And my mom had her through C-section. So for like, I think 3 months, my mom couldn't move, couldn't bend, couldn't do anything. And my dad was away. Again, he was away. So I remember my mom would soak the napkins the whole day. I've gone to school, right? So my mom would wait for me to come back from school, wash the napkins. These other siblings of mine, I have to wash their clothes. We don't have water. We don't have electricity. We are kind of. I have to go to get water like almost 30 kilometers with a wheelbarrow because there's no water in that house. And mind you, I just got home at around like 7 p.m. in the evening. So first order of business, go get water. By the time I'm done, it's 8. Wash uniform for my siblings. Wash napkins for our last one. Then cook for them. By the time I'm done with all that shenanigans, it's around 10 p.m. I have homework to do. We don't have electricity, so I'm using what is it? Koroboi. I don't know what koroboi is in English. Koroboi in English inaitwa nini? Unajua majina za shida zinanga kwa kizungu. We used to I would start with a koroboi because I not even study for me to do homework. So by the time I'm done with all that, it's 11 p.m. And mind you, I'm a kid. Looking back, I was a kid. Class 8, I was in class 8 was 14 or 13. I'm a kid, man. So I've slept at around 11. By 4, I'm up because I have to wake up before everybody else. I have to leave my mom set, for the day. So if it's food I cook for her, so that she'll be set for the day, so that she won't struggle when I'm not there. My siblings, I have to prep them to go to school. When I'm done with all of them, now I can go to school, So that's why I say it's a gift academically, because if I didn't have that gift of academically gifted, I would have struggled so much because I didn't have time to read and it wasn't by choice. And just to paint the picture of how much I struggled as a kid, there's one story that stands out by me. And I wish my mom, I don't know, maybe she's busy, but I would have called her and she would have confirmed this story for me. And I remember I was in class 8 again. At this particular point, us and poverty, BFFs, man, best of buddies. So I didn't have school shoes. I used to wear slippers. Do you know the blue and red slippers? These are bafu. That's what I used to go to school with. And they were so torn that I used to mend them myself with a wire. You know that thing ya huku chini kikatika? Naidunga wire ndo support isitokane. So I remember during the rehearsal, the principal called me and was like, do you know it's a requirement that during KCPE you have to be in full uniform? That means shoes. When I told my mom, and my mom wrote a letter, she was like, dear principal, I understand what you're saying, but my son's shoes are torn beyond repair, and at this particular moment, I cannot afford to buy him shoes. Please allow my kid to do the exams as he is. And they allowed me, So those are one of the beautiful moments I remember growing up. And you know why I say I'm gifted academically again? When I was in primary, I always dreamed of going to a national school. Leave now. Now they're like 62. I don't know. Back then, there were like 18 national schools that mattered. And I remember my dad, props to my dad, he helped me choose this. He was like, you know what? I'm a KDF. Apply to my Forces Academy. You'll get it. Not because of connection. My dad wasn't a big shot in the army. Nah. So then he was I dare say, huku chini kabisa. I think he was a corporal or something. But he told me, the only added advantage you have is you're my son. And during the selection, they give priority to kids who have army as their father. I was like, cool. So I selected my first academy, number 1. Number 2 was Alliance. Number 3 was Mango. And I think Patch. Patch is Nairobi School, number 4. And guess what? When results are announced, first calling letter I got, my Forces Academy in Nairobi. I've up until this day, I'm trying to think of a day I was happier than that. I don't find. I cannot compare because it wasn't connection, it wasn't corruption. And in my primary school, I was the only one who was called to a national school. Only one. And I wasn't number 1 by then in KCP, Shule. I was number 4. But I was the only one who got a calling letter to a national school. That's how I ran away from Mombasa. So that's how I came to Nairobi now. For those who know me as Tito Karis 254 and they hear me talk and they think I'm all born here. No. What brought me to Nairobi was school. So I got to my first academy, but things didn't go as planned. And because back home, we were still struggling. My mom and my dad's marriage were struggling. And being a firstborn, my mom, I was confident. So she'd tell me everything, the fighting they're going through with my dad. She would tell me, but what she didn't understand is it was taking a toll on me as a kid because I was just but a kid. And the only way I would process this, bro, high school, bro, I think I was suspended thrice, if I'm not wrong. I was just something. Those who know me from my first academy meet me today and they're surprised because what I am now and what I was back then, I'm a totally different person. I was very rebellious. I was very angry. I used to fight a lot. I remember even in Form 4, I was suspended for beating up a Form 2 kid for no reason, apparently. But looking back, it was because I didn't have anywhere to let go of this anger and bitterness I had because of what was going on in our home. So my first academy transitioned. Thank God. I was not supposed to finish Form 4 again. I couldn't have because I remember the last expulsion I got was an indefinite expulsion because I'd sneaked out of school. Quite a jam session. Things of this world that we have done. So I got expelled indefinitely. And I remember my dad was so pissed at me. And he told me, you know what? Just stay home. The day I will feel like you're ready to go back home to school, I'll decide that. Funny story. My dad is one of those macho men. So when I got expelled or suspended, my dad was in Somali. So he came. Imagine, I haven't seen my dad for like 6 months. He gets in the house, he says hi to him, Simakabo. He skips me. He doesn't say hi to me. And when he's done saying hi to everybody, he says, the karaoke I know is supposed to be in school. This one who is here, I don't know who this is. And imagine, my dad didn't talk to me for like 3 weeks until the said date of closing day in our school. That's when he called me now. He was like, tell me why you're at home again. That's my dad for you. Tough love, but I love that man to death, man. But yeah, thank God I finished Form 4. That's where the turning point happened. After Form 4, my dad told me, he sat me down. He's like, you know what, karaoke, you've really, really stressed me out. And in this next phase of your life, I don't have the energy to deal with you. You're a grown up. I can't beat you. I can't scold you. I stayed home for 1 whole year. 1 whole year. You see that year where after people are called back to university, everybody goes, I was at home being the housemaid. There isn't a house chore I can't do. May I usually tell even people, mimi kama ni kupika, I'm the best cook. Not out of passion, out of necessity. I can clean a house, I can wash sufurias. That was the punishment I got. I became a houseboy kwetu for like 1 year. And my dad was like, I want you to stay at home and I want you to decide what you want to do with your life for a whole year. Every day doing nothing. And I remember when the 1 year elapsed, my dad called me and he sat me down. And he was like, okay, karaoke, so what do you want to do with your life? Honestly, I was clueless. I didn't know. So my dad told me, do this, yeah? Tonight, I want you to go sit down and write for me 10 things that you find yourself doing effortlessly without anyone pushing you to do it. And he told me, usiogope, it could be the silliest of things, but please write down to me. And I went and I wrote down a list. I wrote down, I like watching TV. I like watching, at that particular time, JKL was the thing. And Larry Madoff. I wrote all those things. I wrote, I like cooking, I like doing ABCD. And I took to him the list and was like, okay, from this list, clearly you love things to do with media. And my mom told me, have you ever thought of being a journalist? I was like, nope. I don't know what that means. It was like, from this list that you've written, karaoke, you are going to be a journalist. That's what my mom told me. I was like, really? You think so? It's like, yeah. Because how you talk, you don't struggle talking. You enjoy watching TV a lot of times. You love these people you see on the TV. You want to be like them. The only thing that makes sense that I'm sure you'll enjoy to do when going to school is journalism. Okay, I was like, fine. My dad told me, I won't even sweat looking at school for you. Go find a school, admit yourself, tell me these are the requirements, this is the school fees, I will do the rest. And I remember doing my research and I was reading a newspaper and I found an advertisement for a multimedia University of Kenya. And that's how I found myself in MMU. Because what attracted me to MMU was like, they have a radio station. I was like, radio station? This is the place I want to be. And financial, it wasn't expensive compared to Daystar and other schools that I'd done my research. And because I had to consider my dad wasn't willing to spend as much money. He was not going to take a gamble with my academics again. So that's how I found myself in multimedia. And when I joined MMU, I wasn't even interested in radio. I wanted to do TV, I wanted to do TV. I liked being on the. I thought I liked being on the screen. I enjoyed, and I remember even first year, second year. Hey bro, every time we would have a group discussion, me not talk about present. I wanted that. I wanted the limelight. I enjoyed it. Then we got to third year. There's a unit where now you're supposed to do radio, which is radio producing, and now radio presenting, which is you have to do news reporting, news anchoring, all those aspects of radio. And the first time I remember I did radio reporting, bro, I loved that stuff. And you know, in a class, you're like 20 people. And I remember, I think among 20 people, out of 20, I was among the 5 people who didn't struggle reading a news report. You know, doing news report is easy until you get a script and you have to do it, you know, without choking on air and whatever. And I did it. And my teacher is called Mr. Laban. I don't know where he is these days. He was like, "You're really good at this stuff. You should, you know, consider it." And then I remember one day I was just in studio, slacking around. Now at this particular point, now we're in third year. We've done news reporting, whatever. Now we go to fourth year now. The unit requires us now to produce a radio show. Produce now. No, it wasn't fourth year. It was third year, second semester. Third year, first semester was reporting, writing report, you know, whatever. Third year, second semester now, we are supposed to produce a radio show. So I remember we were in a group of 5. We produced a show and we got the drive show. That was the show we took to produce, and we put up a very good show to produce. But the presenters we had at that particular moment, they were not it. They were nowhere close to being it. They were I don't know what they were doing. So in a consensus, as a group, we decided why can't we produce and present it ourselves? We are 5, right? So 3 of you produce, 2 of you present. I remember it was me and a guy called Carl. And I told Carol Omom. Shout out to my brother. So we became the first presenters of our show. And we decided to do the show by us. And I remember the first time we got on air. It was one of the best feedbacks we ever got on radio. All to say, the influence of radio started there, and that's how I loved radio. I stumbled upon radio, to say the least. In my wildest dream 5 years back, then, I never thought I wanted to be a radio presenter. I never imagined, I never desired that aspect. I stumbled and I was like, you know what? This is actually fun. I enjoy telling stories. I enjoy making people happy, making people laugh. Why not do it? And I did it and I enjoyed it. But I want to take a step back, kidogo. One of my biggest influence when it comes to radio is Jimani. Shout out to Jimani, man. I've tried to get hold of that man, man. My goodness. He's like a genie who you can't get hold of. I remember, if there's one of who I've pestered a lot, is Jimani. And he's been gracious enough. Once in a while, he responds to my DMs and, you know, he encourages me. And a segue on how I got into podcasting. He was one of the many people. Now, when I was doing MMU radio consistently, I did MMU radio for almost 4 years. And I remember reaching out to Jimani because like, this community shit is not working for me. I want to go to the big league with big boys. I DM'd Jimani and it's like, hey bro, I sent him some of my links in Nini. At that particular moment, I think I'm the it guy, because now in MMU and in Rongai, you know how I knew I was the shit? Let me tell you a funny story. One day I'm meeting Mutura, and the person who's telling Mutura is an old guy. So it was a place I used to frequent most times. Day 1, day 2, day 3. One time I pay with M-Pesa. The guy looks at M-Pesa, is like, Titus Karaoke. And then he asked me, an elderly guy, he was like, nikuulize, hii Titus Karaoke ndiyo Tito Karis? Nikamuuliza kwa nini? Hapana, wewe nijibu tu. Nikamwambia, unajua unakujanga hapo unaitisha mtoto. Hiyo sauti nasikia. Nakuanga nakusikiza. Akaniuliza and he told me, unakuanga MMU radio? Unafanyanga drive show? I was like, yeah. Mimi napenda show yako. Hata kama unaongea kizungu mingi na sielewi, lakini mimi napenda show yako. Technically, what the old guy was trying to tell me was, your voice sounds familiar. Every time you come and order Mutura, you have a familiar voice. And every time I try to ping that voice to somewhere, I can't get it. And I usually assume you are Tito Karis, but I'm too shy to ask you. And I'm like, so are you Tito Karis? That's when he asked me. And I was like, yeah, I'm Tito Karis. And he's like, I love your show so much. And that was a compliment to me because it wasn't a young guy. No. Because my show, drive show, audience was for young people. He was an elderly guy, but he enjoyed my show. He enjoyed the music. That was one of the biggest compliments I ever got. That's when I knew I was like, you know what? I'm doing it right. And another influence of mine in radio is Charlemagne the God. He does the Breakfast Club. And Charlemagne, who I've been following for a very long time, one of the best advice I got from him was, you love radio, you want to do radio, and you want to go to commercial. At whatever level it is that you're doing radio, whether it's community, whether it's a small radio station, conquer that place. That was the best advice of me. If the people around you are not recognizing you, don't wait for you to go up there to be recognized. So in my mind, I was like, okay, what does that mean? So in Rongai, I have to conquer Rongai. And boy, did I not conquer Rongai. Every supermarket used to play my show. That time was Tumaini Supermarket, Clean Shelf Supermarket. I'd have people who would walk into Tumaini Supermarket and they'd call me. Niaje Karis, wala nasikia show yako hapa. I'm listening to your show. Shout out to you. At Clean Shelf, hey, niaje Karis, I'm listening to your show. That was it's a supermarket. I'm not paying them to listen to my show. But that was the biggest compliment I ever got. I'd find security guards who listen to my show and then recognize me through my voice, not my face, through my voice. So, my influences have been Charlemagne the God, Jimani, back to Jimani. So I tried reaching out to Jimani and I'm like, bro, man, I think I'm good at this stuff. I want to be on radio. I want to be on Homeboys radio. So I thought, and he told me, I'd love to. I'd really love to. But right now there's an opportunity. But what I can tell you is build and they will come. I think up until now, no, I changed it. That used to be my mantra for so long. Build and then come. And he explained to me, told me, whatever it is you think you're good at, build your stuff first. And that's how he introduced me to podcasting. He told me, do you have a podcast? I was like, what is podcasting? Go do your research. And I did my research. This was back in 2016, if I'm not wrong, 2016. So my first podcast was called Truth Cafe Podcast. I used to do it with a lady called Rongai. Around 2016, 2017, thereabout, if I'm not wrong. Or 2017, 2018. I might have mixed up the timelines, but thereabout. He told me, go work on yourself. Go build a platform for yourself. Don't go knocking on people. Build your stuff and let people come knocking to you. And from that day on, I stopped chasing and attracting, these places. I did podcasting. I did radio for a while. It got to a point now, it had become too monotonous for me. I wasn't growing. I wasn't becoming any lesser. I've conquered everything. Everybody who would hear me do radio, all they would do is praise me. It was good for some time, but I got to a point was, if I'm this good, why can I not get into Kiss? Why can I not get into Homeboys? Why can I get into Hot 96? Why not? So I did that for a while. And then I got to a point now, it started to become frustrating. I quit radio now because I wasn't growing. I wasn't elevating. Because at MME Radio, anybody who was there within that period of time, if you ask them, I was the best of the best. Not my words, their words. Because there was nobody who could teach me anything that I didn't know. Every student who would come to MME Radio, they wanted to be like me. They'd be like, Karis, show me, teach me, show me, So it got to a point and when and let me tell you about praises, the one thing people don't tell about praise is it messes up your psyche, it messes up with your head. Because all these praises I'm getting, Karis, you're good, you're this, you're that. Now it gives me the confidence, you know what? I can actually get into these spaces. And now I try knocking on these doors. Homeboys, Kiss, I'm telling you, I've sent my CV to every media house I can possibly imagine. I've done this. Kwanza in RG, bro. You owe me a therapy session. because let me tell you, when you're full of life, full of hope, and I'm telling to fresh graduates, nobody cares, bro. When you finish school, you think the world revolves around you. You think you're the best thing that could have ever happened to the universe. And that was my problem. So over time, why I quit radio was I go frustrated now. Because now I have given it my all. Podcasting, radio. But the problem is there's no finance coming in. Now that was the frustrating bit. I'm doing all this voluntary work. Nazitanga kazi ya kanisa, loosely. All this voluntary work, there's no pay, there's no reward, there's nothing. The only reward I'm getting is word of mouth. It's a compliment. That's the best everyone could ever do for me. Up until today, I haven't made a single cent from radio, from podcasting. I haven't. Here's the thing. Getting in, I knew there were no return because you remember this is a community radio station. And I remember, take a step back kidogo, When I was choosing journalism and radio, my dad asked me one simple question. Pick a career that you will be willing to do for free. That was the best advice I ever got. So even remember, even when I'm doing this MMU radio, at the beginning, I'm not in it for the money. I'm doing it for the experience, for the exposure, hoping that I'd transition into a bigger platform. That's why. So the money was never the issue at the beginning. It was never a problem at the beginning. But what started becoming frustrating is I remember even because we became so good at the show, now the show started getting adverts, paid adverts. You know, community hazikosangi mambo, but paid advert. I remember I did an advert for Big Razor. We did one for Pen. We did, as in we would get scripts for, you know, a reader advert. And you'd do them. And, you know, you talk to people in the studio and you'd realize there's money moving around here. But that money, unfortunately, doesn't get to you. And you know how I knew the money was coming in? Because they were very strict with the time. If I had a mention at 4:10, I dare not miss that mention. Even the head of radio would call me, mbona sijasikia mention ya big hapo? Because my show was 3 hours. So in 3 hours, I'd have like 6 mentions. Every hour, 2 mentions. So when the money started coming in, something like in my mind, I'm like, so if I'm this good for me to get adverts on my show, why am I not getting even a simple reward and compensation? But the frustration came in now. My dad, he was like, for how long are you going to do this? Because remember this particular moment, I have zero source of income. I'm crashing at my friend's place. It's called Freddy Kochari. We call him Chess. So I don't have money. I don't have a job. The only thing that's keeping me together is my ambition and my dream to be a radio presenter. At this point, now I'm done with school. I finished MMU at 2017. Now I'm done with school. Now I'm pushing radio almost 2 years later after school. I'm still MMU. All I do is show up at MMU radio from 4 to 7. Do my show. I remember I used to live in Tuskys. I'd walk on there from Tuskys to radio and back. Walk. Do my show. And the whole day I have nothing else to do. And the problem with ambition, what people don't tell you about ambition is ambition clouds your judgment. Because I was so tunnel visioned. So tunnel. I couldn't think or see anything any different. If you try to tell me to do anything else, we'll become enemies. That's how I transitioned into the Matatu industry. That's how I transitioned. How it came about is, financial independence as a man is one of the things I think many people don't tell you about. But money gives you confidence. Let nobody lie to you. Money gives you confidence. It gives you peace of mind. Because at that particular point, I'm struggling through my career. I had a depressing episode that I couldn't talk to anybody about. Because in my mind, I was like, if I stopped doing this and did something else, to me, that meant I'd given up on my dream. And there was no way I was going to give up on my dream. No way. I couldn't imagine waking up one day and be like, I'm not doing radio anymore. And one of other influences that influenced me and gave me good advice. Internet is my best friend. Social media is my best friend. That's why I get the best advice. Steve Harvey. One day I'm just at home scrolling through YouTube and he was like, if you have a dream, if you have a passion, make sure you don't die while you're chasing that passion. And he explained and said, find something that will finance your dream. And that was the best advice that I ever got. What that meant is, as much as I love radio, I love radio, I love podcasting. Do I still need to eat? Yes. Do I still need to dress up and look good? Yes. Do I need a place to live? Yes. So how am I going to do these 3 things while I stay on course? That's how Matatu became part of me. And in one of my episodes of my latest podcast called Catch a Vibe, I say, the Matatu business I did not choose the Matatu business. It kind of chose me. And that's how I found myself. Because growing up in Rongai and living in Rongai, I became so close with people in the Matatu industry. And I remember a friend of mine called Joe Jali. One day, I think he used to see how much I'm suffering. He'd be like, Karis, come, let's go for a trip from Rongai to town. And he'd tell me, nilipishie gari. That means as in collect the fare in the bus. And that's what I used to do. And if I did that for like 2 trips, at the end of the day, it'd give me like 200. That's how I got into Matatu. He'd do that day 1, day 2, day 3. And then a friend of mine called Kababa, he was like, Karis, I see you struggling so much. Come, I show you how this thing is done. Kababa is one guy who held my hand. And you know why I say Matatu chose me? Because even before Matatu, I remember even during my attachment period. So back in MMU, there's a period where you're required to go do attachment while you're still in school. So I got my attachment at we have suffered, my people. Because now that I'm remembering, even getting an attachment was a problem for me. I remember I got an attachment at Meru. Was it Meru or Embu TV station? And Maki, I'm not Embu. I'm not even Meru. But that was my last option. It used to be at Longonot Place. So that's where I used to do my attachment. But during that period, I have no money, I have zero money. So transport, I depend on these guys who are my friends, conductors, that carry me for free in the morning, and in the evening, they'd carry me for free. Because I think they'd had me do radio in MMU. They'd listen to me. And I never knew even they listened to the show. And that's how I knew the show was big. Because one day, while I'm in a matatu going home, so a group of people enter. You know, conductors are very, what is the word of uchokozi inamaanisha nini kwa kizungu? What's the word? Conductors are very cheeky. So one day I'm in the matatu and I think a group of ladies, like 4, no, we are from town, right? And then we get to multimedia, a group of like 5 ladies get into matatu who are from school. While they enter, Kababa, who is a conductor, tells them, do you know these guys are celebrity at your school? Now they're trying to tease me. And I'm like, please stop. No, he's like, this is Tito Karis, the radio presenter guy. I'm Mjui. You don't know him? Now they're trying to tease me. And that's when I realized these guys actually listen to my show. And remember, they're conductors. So they don't even have time. But for one reason or another, they listen to my show. And I think that's when they realize, oh, this guy is not like any of us. He has a gift, he has a talent. And so they started treating me differently. So they never asked me for transport money. I would go from town to Rongai and town. I don't pay fare. Me, I haven't paid fare for like, I think, I don't know. I can't remember the last time I paid fare while I was in Rongai. The perks of being a conductor and knowing people. But how I got into the Matatu industry officially now, what drove me into that was I realized I would die of depression just because I'm passionate. I will die of hunger. I remember this friend of mine called Freddy Kochari. We would stay in the house the whole day. We have nothing to eat. Nothing, bro, nothing. We would stay hungry. And I remember you even try call, let's say, Apollo. Like, Naja, bro, send me 100. But Apollo will only send you 100 for 2 days. Day 3, when he sees your call, he's not picking, not because he's a bad friend, but he cannot keep doing that. And for so long, I used to be bitter at people because how can you say you're my friend and you cannot send me money? Don't you know I'm suffering? But over time, I understand and I realize they cannot. Everybody's fighting their own battle. Everybody's struggling. That's how I got into Matatu, because I had to figure a way out to stand on my own financially. Because I'm in Nairobi, remember, right? And home is in Mombasa. And my dad gave me 2 options. You either go back home, and there's no way I'm going back home, or I'm not supporting you. Because in logically to him, it was like, I cannot pay your rent, food, and there's nothing to show for it. For how long can I do it karaoke? You're not working. There's no progression in your life. How do you expect me to pay rent for you? And I realized, you know what, he has a point. So I never told him my problems. Even the day I was sleep hungry or I didn't have a place to sleep, I never told him. I, work it out as a man. So that's how I found myself in the Matatu industry, because slowly and gradually I became good at it. It is a weird thing to say, but I think in everything that you do, you have to be good at what you do. And I remember in the beginning stages, I used to be very shy, man. Because remember, I'm coming off at a point now. I was a radio presenter at MME Radio. No matter how small it may seem, but I was kind of a name. People knew me. I was doing a podcast called Truth Cafe, so people knew my face. And I remember one of the last content of videos I did before I got into Matatu was a video I did with Bobby. Bobby is a content creator from East, Mist, West. We did a social experiment video. It's on my channel, Tito Karis. Shameless plug. And the video did so well. Up until now, I think it has 15,000 views. So I'm coming off that. Now nimeingia Matatu. Now I'm in the Matatu industry. So if I met someone like Apollo and I know Apollo knows me, hide myself for a little bit. Because I felt kind of embarrassed. Because let's face it, we live in a society where conductors don't have a good rep. They don't have, every bad thing is always associated to a conductor. Bad behavior, thieves, mishandling people. Growing up, there is no household where a kid is told, I want you to become a conductor. Never. There isn't a single household where a kid tells their parent, no, what, ma'am, I'm looking forward to be a conductor when I grow up. No, it's associated with failures, people who have not gone to school. So in the beginning stages, I used to hide myself. I used to be very shy, very timid. Even if I met former schoolmates, if I meet Apollo in town and he's like, hey, mapotelea wapi? How have you been? What are you doing? The much I would say I am within. Because I'm not willing to tell you I'm a conductor. How? How will you think of me? How will you take me? But over time, I gained the confidence. And the one thing that made me embrace being a conductor was I realized day in, day out, this work that many people seem to despise solved many of my problems. So all of a sudden now, I'm not asking for money to eat. All of a sudden now, I have my place. All of a sudden now, I can dress up and look sharp and clean. So in my mind, I'm like, you people can say whatever you want to say, you can hate, but I love what I'm doing. And when I say I love what I'm doing, it might come out across as very sad in a way to say, because again, as I've said, conductors don't have a good rep. But when I say I love what I do, to mean I respect the hustle because it finances my day-to-day livings. Secondly, what being a conductor has taught me is in life, the basic disciplines and principles. To say, I believe in God. I was brought up in a church home. And in one of the things where growing up in church, and I remember one of the teachings in the Bible was, I don't know whether you know the story of these servants who are given talents or coins, depending on what Bible you're reading. Like this one is given two, and then the master went away. And when he came back, he asked them, what have you done? One of them hid it under a table. The other one went and multiplied it. The other one used what he had. Moral lesson of the story is, in whatever it is that you do in life, make sure you're good at it. You may not like it. You might be a cleaner, but do it to the best of your ability, because the Bible says, if God cannot trust you with a little talent, he won't trust you with a bigger talent. So if I cannot give it my all in the Matatu industry and say, when I become a radio presenter, that's when I will work hard, it doesn't work that way. And let me tell you, being a conductor takes a lot of discipline. Bro, I wake up every day. Latest waking up is 5:30 in the morning. I have to be up by 5:30. I'm out of the house by 6. And do you know what time I come back in the house? Earliest is midnight. Every single day. And one thing about being a conductor is you're not employed by anybody. So if I'm tired today, tomorrow I might decide I don't want to wake up. But the discipline to keep doing it each and every single day is what differentiates you from you to another person. And I translate it to my career in radio. The discipline I'm learning right now will translate in radio. And that's why I love what I do. Because I know I cannot take this for granted and hope when I get radio, I'll have the same. Because in radio, I've done radio before. Radio takes a lot of discipline. Time management is very important. How you dress, how you deal with people, very important. So the disciplines I'm learning here in the Matatu industry, I give them my all. I'm never late to work. I always show up. I do my work like an office. I work 7 days in a week. And if I'm not working, I'm elsewhere. Like I'm here today. Because that's how serious I take the Matatu industry. Yeah. So the one thing about the Matatu industry, there's a lot of gangster shit, to say the least, that works in the Matatu industry. To say, for you to survive in the Matatu industry, one, the industry people have to accept you. So how I got from earning 200 in a day or 100 to becoming like the main guy. Like I am one of the main guys of the Matatu. Like if there's a Manyanga that's coming to Rongai, I'm one of the top picks. Why am I saying so? Is because one, the Matatu industry, as much as people may not believe this, discipline is very important. So for a driver, as a conductor, many a times we get our jobs through drivers. And a good driver wants a good conductor. And a good conductor, there are 2 requirements for a good conductor. Timekeeping. So this driver has to have faith in you, knowing that if Karis gets a salary of 3,000 today, he will wake up tomorrow morning still. You know why? Because many of these conductors, if a conductor gets 3,000 today, best believe he's not waking up tomorrow. You know why? Because this man is going to drink, use it on women. So by the time it's in the morning, he doesn't even know he's supposed to wake up. So the one thing that I say that has enabled me to grow in the higher upper echelons industry of the matatu is time and discipline. Showing up every day, that's one. Number two, dressing up. You have to be very presentable. As much as people don't believe it, you have to be presentable. You have to stand out. You have to stand out. Like for me in the matatu industry, I don't wear uniforms. And, I hope NTSA is not listening, wakuja wanishike. But in Rongai or in the matatu industry, there's a term that is used loosely. It's called hot boys. We don't wear uniforms because hot boy means looking sharp. You see, if you are a customer, especially ladies, they're more likely to get into a matatu with a conductor who is looking sharp than one who's looking ragged. I don't know whether you're catching my drift. So if you're presentable, you look presentable, you're good looking, you smell nice, the likability, because what happens in the matatu industry is this lady probably will feel like I can trust him more than I can trust the other person. So that's why in the matatu industry, the word hot boys. So hot boys, these are like the best conductors. If you're ever in a route and you hear this is hot boy, he's one of the best conductors in that route because one, he's presentable, customers trust him and they see him every day, and to some extent, he's probably good looking, depending on who is looking. So, and being a hot boy is a risk because we all know in the NTSA Act, a conductor is supposed to have a PSV badge and a uniform, but a hot boy, you cannot be a hot boy if you wear a uniform. We have this thing, we say, there's no I will wear a uniform in primary and secondary, and when I still come out here to work, you require me to wear a uniform. It doesn't happen. Getting the matatu industry, one of the challenges people don't tell you about, it hardens you. There's a lot of aggressiveness. You have to be very aggressive. You cannot be timid. You cannot be shy. You cannot be polite. As much as you need to be to the customers, but it's a very competitive sport. And one of the things I had to learn on very early was that. But for me, it wasn't hard because, again, remember, my dad is a soldier. So the upbringing I had was not easy one. I had a very tough upbringing. And I remember one of the challenges at the early days of being a conductor pro was getting arrested. Because being a hot boy, there's a price you pay. As I've told you don't have a uniform, you don't have a badge. So if you don't have those two things, you're a high target for the police. So I remember the first time I got arrested, it was a very surreal moment for me because I'd never been arrested prior to that. Never. I remember I got arrested at Nyayo Stadium. I was taken to Nyayo's cell. Then I was taken to Langata police cell. Then we went to Kibera Law Court. I went before a judge. Then let me tell you, in whatever you do, make sure you do it to the best of your ability and the standard. Do you know why I'm saying so? At the Kibera Law Court, we went before a magistrate and we were all, everybody was sentenced. You were like, you are here for 2 counts, uniform and a badge. And when the judge is done sentencing you, all you have to do is defend yourself now. And I remember, bro, how I defended myself. I think the judge had never had any conductor in her entire life who had a very polished English than me. Because I spoke in English, and even the other conductors were shocked. Because I told the judge, I'm learned, I have a degree, and all I'm here to do is I'm trying to survive. And let me tell you how that helped me being learned. We were like 5. So the first 4, for each count, they were fined 10,000. Uniform, 10,000. Badge, 10,000. Total, 20,000. And when it got to me, 5,000 each. The others were able to defend themselves, but how I presented myself, I presented like I'm not part of the group and part of the pack. I'm a different guy and I'm a different breed. And I think that's what the judge saw in me and the magistrate. And I remember the guy who was beside me. Let me tell you, you're being sentenced at around 4:30 and the courts are closed by 5. So if it's the fine, you have to pay before 5. And if you don't pay, you get transferred to prison, which is industrial area. So imagine judge has fined you 20,000. Apollo, are you getting 20,000 right now? If I ask you for 20,000 right now, can you give me 20,000? Like on the spot. And remember, this is just but a conductor. For a conductor, for you to save an accumulative total of 20,000, it's not easy. But when the judge told me 10,000, I thought it was easy money for me. I was able to pay the fine and I was out, and that's how I didn't go to jail. All to say, so that was not the first time, it was the last time. I get arrested a lot of time. And one of the things people don't realize is there's a lot of corruption in this country. That's the thing I see and I've learned in the Matatu industry. It's not easy. Every day we get arrested. I remember there was one time I got arrested in town. I think, and that's a man. I don't had. I let me know. Let's not go to political. But you know what? Fuck the police. Because I remember we got arrested in town at around 1 p.m. Same reason, touting, no uniform, and I think we got arrested around 20 people. And what these cops did, they put us in a double file. Yeah, so double file, that means 2 lines, and you're all cuffed, and then in a single line, a very long line, and you're told the one who's in front of you put a hand on their shoulder, and you're supposed, you know where we are, at railway station, and we were supposed to walk all the way to Central Police Station. Central Police Station iko university huku juu, and we're not walking, we are running, and if you dare lose your grip on the other, makofi unapigwa. I've never felt so humiliated in my life, because in my mind I'm like, what have I done? I'm not stealing, I'm not a thief. Like, why would you torture me like this? Like I'm like a big time thief. Like, you've just. And I remember we got to Central, and I didn't even speak to anyone for, like, I think the whole day up until night. That's when my driver came and sorted, and I was out. But sitting in the concrete floor in a cell, you ask yourself so many questions. Why is the system fighting you? Because all I'm doing is I'm trying to get to make a living for myself. I'm not stealing. If I was a thief, it would be something else. But I'm genuinely working hard for myself, and you're torturing me like I'm a big time thief. I've had, you'd find a cop would just hit you for no reason, slap you for no reason, just because, to them being a conductor is nothing. Cops usually tell us they can make you disappear. And let me tell you, being in the street, you believe that shit. Like right now in a climate where there are protests, and I appreciate and I support those who are doing it. But I usually know, I've dealt with police. I know what police are capable of. And it's not like I'm afraid. Yes, I'm afraid, because you know what? I'm still very young. I have a future ahead of me. And I usually tell people who I meet who are, interested in protests, take care of yourself, because police don't care. That's where one thing the police have to, they don't care, bro. They just wake up one morning and decide there's going to be an operation. That's how they milk money from us. It's a very lucrative business, but the people who eat for you, the police, the kanjos, askari kanjo, it's a very tricky business. But you know what? At times you sit back and you are to weigh the bad and the good. The good is there, and you're like, you know what? Every work has its own challenges. So you just, you hang in there, you struggle, and you say, you know what? It is what it is. Look, man, the one thing that I told myself when I became a conductor is I will try and demystify the basic stereotypes of a conductor. Number one, untrustworthiness. That's number one. And I dare say I'm good at what I do. And for those who know me and will listen to this will agree with me. I'm good at what I do because, one, I make sure my customers can trust me. You know why? So if I tell you I'm going to get from point A to B, I make sure I get you to point A to B. There are some matatus who are, famous for, it's from point A to B, but once they get halfway, they're like, mwisho. And they don't care. You get. Another thing is the price. What most passengers don't understand is in the matatu industry, there's what we call boo-boo game. So every time you're at a terminal, at a bus terminal in Nairobi, and all you hear a conductor say is, beba, beba, beba. Yeah? As much as you know the fare from point A to B is 50, best believe it is not 50 bob. That's what we call boo-boo game. So make sure before you enter, ask the conductor, and not just anybody, because you see at a terminal there are like 5 guys who are filling one matatu, right? So you go to person 1, how much is the car? 50. Are you the conductor? Yes. He's not the conductor. Ask for make sure you know who is the conductor to that car. Many people or many customers complain, I was told A, when I got it was C. No, you asked the wrong person. That's the problem. And that's what I usually tell my customers many times. Before you enter Matatu, make sure you know who the real conductor is. So the one thing I do with Matatu is I try and balance. So the money I get, I try use half of it to finance my dream, which is podcasting and radio. and then the other one I try for day to day. So, of course, I'm gonna get back to radio, and I genuinely believe I will. When the time is right, I will be in probably one of these radio stations you like. And I know many people say radio is dead. It could be dead because I think the people who are in power make the wrong choices. I don't listen to radio these days. I used to love radio back then. I don't listen to radio because I think when I listen to radio, I get so angry because I'm like, how did this person get a job when I didn't get a job? And it's not hate and not jealousy, because in my mind, I'm like, if only they were half as good, then maybe I wouldn't feel some type of way, but they're not good. And I think majority consensus is most people don't enjoy listening to radio because radio isn't what it was back in the days. Because the people who are there right now are not catering to the audience. So yeah, I'll be back in radio. The passion, the dream still lives on forever. I usually say it doesn't matter how long it will take me. Even if I'll be 60, bro, I'm going to do radio. Even if I'll be 60 years with gray hair, with grandchildren, I'll be like, kaa hapo kababa, kukaa nafanya radio. It doesn't matter. But I genuinely believe I will do radio. I don't know when, how, where, but I will. But podcasting is a dream of mine. And if you want to listen to some of the stuff I do, it's called Catch a Vibe. I do it with a friend of mine called Morgan. It's a weekly podcast. I haven't put out any new episodes because one of the challenges of surviving and financing your hobby is, life doesn't go as you plan for it. As I've told you, because in a week, maybe I'm targeting to get 5,000. But in that week, I've been arrested like twice. So trust me, I don't have that 5,000. So all to say, Catch a Vibe podcast is where you can find me for more stories.
Catch more African stories in the next episode of Legally Clueless. I hope you enjoyed that story by Tito. In the show notes, there's a link for you if you want to connect with him, if you want to check out his podcast, which I think you really, really, really should do. Let's really support each other as best as we can. But I do want to know what you connected with from his story. I think for me, there's a part where he talked about how ambition can be blinding and it can blind you from reality. That is like such a bitter truth. And I like that he said that within the context of still being very hopeful about his dream. That part, that hit me. That really hit me. I want to know what you connected with. Drop a comment on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. Thank you so, so much for listening to the very end. I appreciate you, and I know you have every single thing it takes to heal. That's it for this episode of Legally Clueless. You can share this podcast with your friends. You can keep it for yourself. I'm not judging. Just make sure you're here next week for the next episode.